Oh. What's going on? What's happening? Oh my God!
American Motors introduces the Gremlin.
Hey, George! What is that? The Gremlin! Oh, move over! What are you doing? Oh, wait a minute, boy! Mind if I drive it? I don't mind. Wait, be careful.
It's smaller than any other car made in America, which makes it easier to park and handle.
You like it? Hey! Wow, what's that? It's a Gremlin! Yeah, get in and drive it. Give it a try.
The Gremlin is priced with the imports, and it gets better gas mileage than any other car made in America.
Hey, guys, wait a minute! Hey, wait a minute, hey! What is this? It's a Gremlin!
And it just could be more fun to drive than any other car made in America.
Whose car is this? This will be mine!
Is that your CPAP?
That's my CPAP, yeah.
That's excellent.
You put your mask on first.
Yeah, yes, you do.
And always wear a mask on a plane.
Yes.
Hey Paul,
What's up?
why am I dressed up like an airline passenger and pretending that we had a problem and I had to put my mask on?
Well, that's because today in the fourth installment of Horror Mayhem, we're finally getting back to Richard Matheson, and we're going to be talking about Nightmare at 20,000 feet.
Nice. Of
Ah.
course, I tried to describe this to my wife and she couldn't remember having seen the Twilight Zone episode or the movie. But once I described it to her, she was like, it kind of sounds familiar.
See,
But
the reason why I picked Nightmare at 20,000 feet is because you and I, to this day, reference stuff from the Twilight Zone movie, and and that was a huge thing for us, before, but even more so than the Bill Shatner Twilight Zone episode, the John Lithgow Crazy Man on a Plane episode.
Yes.
Segment of the Twilight Zone, the movie, is like stuck up here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. For those of you who don't know, Richard Matheson wrote or influenced all the stuff that scares you,
Yes.
whether you know it or not.
Yeah, whether you know it or not, because if you're a Stephen King fan, it's Matheson's fault. If you're our age or maybe a little bit older, you grew up watching TV movie of the weeks, it's Richard Matheson's fault.
Yeah.
He was just a master, one of the most successful prolific authors in American history. I dare say. My favorite American writer, like, of all time, is Richard Matheson. So that's why the Nightmare at 20,000 feet just seemed like a good fit for us.
And it's tight. We like our stories like we like our masks, our oxygen masks. Tight.
I would have said our brains after about 3 bourbons.
Tight. Tight like a tiger. We talked about I Am Legend a few weeks ago, and there's not one word wasted in that entire novel.
No.
And Nightmare at 20,000 Feet's a short story.
Mm-hmm.
Not one word wasted in this entire short story.
Nope. No, Richard Matheson was a wordsmith, and he knew the power of every single word that he put on that page. Everything is very tightly, and that's why he's one of my favorites. Nothing's wasted. Everything is very tightly wound, and you get as much out of his stories as he wants you to get out of his stories, and that's enough.
And not a penny more.
That's right.
for those that don't remember, this was adapted into a Twilight Zone episode starring William Shatner.
One of the
And
most famous
yeah,
Twilight Zone episodes ever.
and it was also parodied in a Saturday Night Live skit, which was hilarious.
Yep.
And then it was one of the vignettes in Twilight Zone movie starring John Lithgow.
Yep. And it's been referenced in like Family Guy's, parodied it. I think The Simpsons have everybody's parodied this episode.
It's the ultimate. I'm the only one who sees what's going on, and nobody will listen to me, and they think I'm going mad. And it turns out I was right the whole time, sort of, depending on which version you watch.
Yeah.
But dude's flying, he's on his way to, I forget where, San Francisco or something.
Yeah.
And
another pointless meeting.
Yeah. He sees somebody standing on the wing of the plane. And it's a prop plane in this case, because when was this written? What decade are we on here?
We're in the 50s for this.
We're in the 50s. Okay.
Yeah.
So back when they still had a lot of non-jet planes, right?
Probably like a DC-3 or something, or DC-10.
And it's funny because he sees the guy out there, and at first he's like, well, that's weird. Somebody must have been on the wing and the pilots didn't know it. And, he calls the flight attendant over, and she looks out and sees nothing, of course. And he sees nothing too, because by the time she gets there, there's nobody out there. He's like, well, there was somebody out there. And it gets increasingly funny.
Yeah. Yes.
Because you figure out that the thing that's on the wing is messing with him.
Yeah, it knows it has an audience.
Yes. At one point, one of the best jump scares, Matheson loves the jump scare, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine being able to write a jump scare with words.
Yes. Dude opens the curtain on the window, and there's the thing, whatever it is, harpy, gremlin, whatever it is, right? He references gremlins of World War II. The pilots would come back and say they saw gremlins trying to dismantle their jets and stuff. And so he references those. And the thing's right up in the window, just like,
Well, and the most believable part about his thought process on that is this was like mid-50s.
Yeah.
The war wasn't that far back,
That's right.
So
5 to 10 years prior. And
yeah.
Those pilots swore there was something out there.
I mean, I imagine you get up that high and there's something wrong with your oxygen mask. You might see all kinds of things. There you go.
One of the reasons I love the Decades of Dread idea and going back, even though the Bookish Bryants, I was watching her and she's like, I don't care. I'm reading stuff from the 20 teens because I felt like reading stuff from the.
I mean, they did come up with it, so they can do what they want.
Yeah, I love her because she's just like, I'm just reading what I want to read. I don't care what you guys say. It's like, you do that.
That's right.
But one of the things I love about these earlier decades is the point you just raised, which is they were written in it. Like we read them now and we're like, oh, how quaint. They think there's a monster in the woods, with the Wendigo, or how quaint. He thinks there might be a harpy on the wing, right? It's easy to forget. Like we're in this age of technology and smartphones and cameras, and everybody's got a camera in their pocket. Back in the day, even when we were kids in the 40s, in the 70s,
Springfield Township knows no time.
There weren't enough cameras to go around, right?
No.
So the fact that there might be a Bigfoot, you could totally rationalize like, okay, we're discovering new species all the time. It's totally possible there's some upright walking thing up there, in the wilderness, or there's a Wendigo, or there's a harpy climbing. It doesn't like immediately make sense. But if you're in 1950s and you know that all these pilots were coming back talking about there being something up there, you might go, well, I'm not saying it's an intelligent being. Maybe it's some kind of weird bird,
Mhm.
It's totally believable
Yeah.
in 1950,
I
right?
mean, you're like okay, you're in like say Guadalcanal, all right? And you're surrounded by jungle and you're the pilot flying stuff in and flying stuff out of that godforsaken jungle, which according to my buddy Billy's dad, he said that, if the enemy didn't get you, the jungle would.
Mhm.
And he come home with, jungle rot, had suffered with that the rest of his life. But anyway, so you're this pilot and you're flying. You could have picked up a monkey for all you know, and
Yeah,
that
right.
monkey's hanging on to the end. You're just, you know what? I'm dying anyway, so I'm taking everything with me. You know, it only took like one monkey.
It only took one monkey. And one monkey, and it makes Richard Matheson's career. Just one monkey's all it took.
That's all it took.
Yeah, so that's one of the, just on a meta level. That's why I love this idea of the decades of dread, because
Hmm.
you have to put yourself in the mindset of somebody that's reading this
Yeah.
10 years after the war ended,
Yep.
or if you're reading the Wendigo, it's 1910 or something, or
Yeah. Yeah. It
whatever,
was 1910. Yeah.
We didn't know what was up there.
Nope.
Nobody. I kind of miss the days where we didn't know,
Yeah.
like
You
where
remember?
there were areas of the earth where we didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. You remember getting the crap scared out of you watching like In Search of?
Yes.
You know?
Speaking of former Star Trek actors,
That's true. Yeah. Exactly. Hey, look at that.
Leonard Nimoy. I love that show, In Search of.
Yep.
But now it's once we figured out there's nothing in Antarctica, there's nothing at the bottom of the sea, there's nothing in the deep wilderness. Now, well, there's nothing on the moon, there's nothing on Mars. Like, where is everything? I'm like,
I don't
it's
know,
like the
but that's almost
Fermi
more
paradox,
terrifying.
but closer to home.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100 years from now, people will be reading horror from our time, going, "Did they really believe that?" So
Yeah.
anyway, nobody believes him. He keeps seeing the thing starts tearing apart. It's funny. I love the part, and I just have this vision of this creature trying to reach its hand into the
Mm,
spinning propeller and like
yep.
jerking its hand back. I
Yep.
thought that was funny, just
Yep.
funny, right?
Yeah. It
And
reminded me very much of the Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's got the gremlin on the plane.
yeah,
So
yes. So somehow, again, it was a different time. It was a pre 9/11 world. Somehow he had a pistol on the plane.
I know. I was reading that going, what the? Just casually had a, at least John McClane was like, it's okay, I'm a cop,
Yeah.
shows the gun. But no, just some random salesman has a 38 or something on the plane.
It was a different time.
Mm.
So he shot the window out because he was going to try to shoot this thing.
Mm.
And of course he gets subdued and they bring out a stretcher where they land. They bring out a stretcher and take him away. And in his head, he's like, they'll know when they see that. And I don't have the book with me. I borrowed it from the library. I had to return it. Because then I went and watched a bunch of clips. I watched the movie. I watched the Shatner episode. I watched the Saturday Night Live parody. Remind me, spoiler alert, in the book, do they find the damage on the thing?
No. In fact, in the story, like as they're wheeling him off, and he's like, finally they'll know, they'll see I'm not crazy, and the one, medic or whatever he was, he's like, man, that's the strangest way I ever heard anybody trying to commit suicide in my life, So completely lost, all for naught.
So it's left up to the reader to decide whether it was real or not.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people. There's a big polarized group of readers between whether it was all in his head or whether he just wanted to kill himself, and whether or whether it was real. And it's crazy. I personally think it was real, and I have my reasons, but maybe we'll get into those.
Let's get into them because that's pretty much the show. That's the show. That's the book.
That was the story. Yeah.
So you think it was
Well,
real? What do you? I happen to agree with you. What are your reasons for thinking
okay.
it
Well,
was real?
he peppers in the whole idea of him being miserable, and he's like he bought the gun in case he gets robbed or whatever. But there's really only one reason why he bought it.
Hmm.
And it was alluding to the fact that life was pointless for him, and he wanted to basically just off himself, but he could never bring himself to do it. All right. So he's seeing this thing on the wing of the plane, and it's messing with him, and it's causing all kinds of mayhem. And he figures out, he has the gun, and he puts his hand on the lever, and he figures if I can pull the lever and then pop it, you know, take it, get rid of it, and I'm going to save all these people. So suddenly life means something to him. He
Mm.
may at one time was at that point, you know, because there's a tipping point, obviously, when you kill yourself between when life goes from meaning something to not meaning anything.
Yeah.
And he realizes that, like, he's going to save all these people. So before he's got a gun in his hand on the lever. He stops for a second, puts his seatbelt on. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And
He
then
didn't shoot
pops
the
the
window
lever.
out in the story. He opened the
Yeah, he pops
emergency
it,
door. Yeah, I forgot about that.
which would have sucked everything out.
Yeah.
So he puts his seatbelt on so he
Yeah.
doesn't go out the window because he doesn't
Yeah.
want to die at this point. He may
Right.
have wanted to die originally, but when life or death is staring you in the face, you know,
Yeah.
most of us will choose life,
Yeah.
And the irony is, of course, he saves the day, but they just think the guy wanted to kill himself.
Yeah, I mean the data bears that out too. I read somewhere that they've interviewed people who have attempted suicide,
Mhm.
and 95% of them, seconds after, like if they jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, let's say, seconds after they jumped, they wish they hadn't. And
Yeah.
so that's why y'all, if you're watching this because you need help, then hang up and dial 911. No,
Yeah.
call the suicide hotline. I don't know what the number is. It'd be helpful if I did. You can call 911, but
I'll put the website.
That's a good idea.
The website link down below.
But the point being that, and I learned this too late in life, because the conventional wisdom was, well, if somebody's going to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves. So yeah, you might save them today, but they're eventually going to do it. It's like, that's not really true.
No,
if you
it
can
is
get
not.
somebody through the crisis, like if they're
Mhm.
right now wanting to kill themselves, if you can get them through the night, make sure they don't have a way to do it. Make sure they don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Keep all the tools of death away from them. Get them through that episode. You've probably saved them for a good long time.
Yeah.
So if he wanted to kill himself, once he got through that and said, wait, I do have some utility here. I could fight this monster. I believed it too. I like your reasoning better. I forgot about the seatbelt, but that's a good reasoning. My reasoning was just because it's Matheson, right? Why would somebody so great at writing horror just make it, oh well, he was just losing his mind, right?
Mhm.
It didn't really happen. He was just losing his mind. I think it's much scarier if it was really a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And who did the Twilight Zone movie?
John Landis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he obviously agreed that it was real because the end scene has them showing the damage that the thing did, right?
Yep.
The original Twilight Zone, they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get what you're saying. Like there's schools of thought, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, he also converted it to the script for the TV show. So, but again, he had to do things like, given the time period it was written in, the show was on the air, he had to rein back the idea of of the main Willis, I think his last name was. They had to rein back the book's right here, but I'm not going to look it up. They had to rein back the idea that he wanted to kill himself because that was too much for television back then.
And it was interesting. He was with his wife. on the plane.
Yeah.
Which to me detracted from. And so Matheson wrote the script for the Twilight Zone.
He wrote the script for the episode, yes,
Yeah.
based on his short story.
Interesting, because to me it took away from this whole concept. And maybe it's a I Am Legend hangover. But one of the things I loved about I Am Legend was the exploring isolation. And the fact that he was flying on a business trip by himself added to that feeling of claustrophobia and isolation, I thought.
Yeah.
But then in the episode, he's sitting next to his wife, and in the movie, he's sitting next to his wife, and it's just a little less claustrophobic that way.
Yeah.
So, on a scale of 4 and 3 and 2 and 1,
I'm gonna give this one a 3. Well, even the Matheson stuff that I don't like will score about a 2.5, but I'm gonna give it a 3. I think Matheson is a stronger novelist than he was a short story writer, even though his short stories are just as tight as his novels. When I'm reading Matheson, I want to read him more long form. But yeah, I'm giving him a 3.
Yeah, I'll go with a 3. And maybe it could also just be that it's so pervasive in our culture. Like maybe if I were reading it for the first time and had never seen any of the other stuff, maybe it would have hit different. But yeah, I really enjoyed his longer work.
It's like when I read the first Zorro novel. Now this was written. I read it for fun because why else do you read? But I read it because I wanted to see what the original. I've always been a Zorro fan. I wanted to read the original, so I got a copy of it, and I read it, and it is no mystery why that character has survived as long as he has, based solely on the strength of that book. That being said, it would have been fun to have read it like in the 1920s or whatever when it came out, to get to the end of it, and when Zorro pulls off his mask and reveals that he's Don Diego Vega, I wish I could be one of those people that went, "Oh my God, I didn't see it coming," because it's written in such a way that you don't know, it's not projected at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, had we read the story prior to seeing the TV show and the movie, yeah, it might have hit a little bit different.
Yeah. Yep.
But still, man, 3 out of 4 is like
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
Nope.
The turbulence has ended, and I think we're landing soon.
Okay, well then I'm gonna close my the book that I bought for the flight. I mean, it sounds like a good idea on this episode, and I'm gonna talk about next week's episode. The fifth and final installment for Horror Mayhem in 2025. This is gonna be something different. Now, I just discovered this story like Columbus. I found this story like about a week ago, and I'm like, ooh, I didn't read it because I'm like, this is going to be fun. I've never read it. You've never read it. It's based on something that we both enjoy. So it'll be fun to see how that goes. So next week, we're going to be reading In Edmondson's Tent, which came out in 1925 by John Martin Leahy. It originally appeared in Weird Tales back in 1928. Steve, real quick, why don't you tell the folks at home who Edmondson was?
He was an Arctic explorer. And, maybe we'll have to break out the furs.
Maybe. And his the infamous tent that he left behind for Scott is what this story is about. Apparently, there was from what I can gather, I only did a cursory research on it. There was a manuscript in the tent that got left behind. So 1928, it's right there when all this fun stuff was going on.
Yeah.
So it could be a dud. It could be great, but you'll have to watch next week's episode to find out.
Don't be late.
Speaking of stuff to read, the next time you're looking for something to read, first of all, I'm Paul, and that's Steve.
I'm Steve.
The first time,
the first time, or the last time
I saw your face. This is Unhinged. The next time you're looking for something to read,
Check your shelf.